They told you it was chemistry. That spark you can't explain. The racing heart, the restless mind, the way one person's voice, smile, or presence plays on repeat in your head. They told you it was natural, that being consumed by desire was proof of passion, proof of life. But Carl Jung would look you in the eye and say, no, it's not chemistry. It's not magic. It's your shadow. According to Jung, sexual attraction isn't simply about love or physical compatibility. It's a psychological eruption, a flare of energy that reveals more about your wounds than about your wants. Because when you're drawn to someone so intensely that logic disappears, that isn't love. That's projection. Jung believed that each of us carries an unconscious opposite, the anima within men and the animus within women. These inner figures aren't just abstract ideas, they're charged with emotion. They represent the pieces of ourselves we've buried, ignored, or never developed. Here's where it gets unsettling. The moment you meet someone who mirrors your anima or animus, your psyche lights up. It whispers, that person has everything you're missing. And so you don't actually fall for them. You fall for the missing part of yourself. The version of you you've never met. This explains why attraction so often defies reason. You may know the person is wrong for you, unavailable, manipulative, toxic, but the pull is stronger than logic. You feel addicted, haunted, spellbound. Because your unconscious isn't seeking love, it's seeking completion. Now imagine what that means in a world where seduction is weaponized, where people, without even realizing it, learn to imitate your deepest fantasies, where some women discover that the most effective way to hold power over a man isn't aggression, but reflection, to become the embodiment of his unconscious desire. Because if a man has never confronted his anima, if he's never asked himself, why do I crave what I crave, then he isn't choosing. He's being chosen by his wound. And if she instinctively plays that role, he will give in. He'll call it love, but it isn't love. It's projection. She isn't the one. She's a mirror. Jung once said something chilling. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But when attraction is fueled by the shadow, the transformation is often destructive. Obsession, dependency, even despair. Desire reduces the person not to love, but to longing. That's the darkest truth about attraction. We are not always pulled toward what is good for us. We are pulled toward what completes our unfinished story. And sometimes that story is a tragedy. Take the man who never felt seen by his mother. When he meets a woman who is emotionally distant, who dangles affection only when he chases, he feels alive. He believes this is love. But really, he's reenacting the past, trying to win a battle he lost in childhood. This is the compulsion of unresolved trauma. Not always abuse, but often painful emotional patterns left unhealed. The woman becomes his battlefield. He tries to earn what should have been freely given. And the more she withholds, the deeper his desire grows. Now flip the perspective. There are women who are not searching for love at all, but for power. They don't crave connection. They crave pursuit, adoration, obsession, worship. They weaponize sexuality, not because they're villains, but because they're wounded. Their shadow never experienced safe affection. So now, they chase dominance through desire. When a man collapses at her feet, she feels alive. But the moment he asks for intimacy, she runs. Because real love kills the illusion. Attraction is not always connection. Sometimes it's a trap, a psychological snare, where unmet needs disguise themselves as romance. Jung didn't reveal this to scare us away from desire. He revealed it so we'd ask better questions. Who does my soul reach for when my mind is asleep? Why do I crave what I crave? Because if you don't ask, you'll keep choosing the same story again and again. Different faces, same pattern. You'll call it fate, but it's just your shadow pulling strings. Here's the truth few want to hear. Sometimes the person you desire most is the exact person who will destroy you. Not because they're evil, but because your psyche is trying to recreate the original wound, hoping that this time maybe you'll survive it. That isn't love. That's karma. And karma isn't punishment. It's repetition until you learn. The darkness isn't in the other person. It's in you, in your projections, in your cravings, in the ghosts you keep chasing. Sexual attraction can be sacred, but only when you pull back the curtain and ask, is this love or is this an unfinished story, replaying itself through me? You think you're in control, that you decide who you flirt with, who you date, who you chase. But what if every move you make in your love life isn't really yours at all? Jung warned that the unconscious is always active. And the most dangerous part is, you don't know when it's choosing for you. Let me tell you a story. There was a man, respected by everyone, successful, intelligent, emotionally aware. But every time he fell in love, it was with women who emotionally rejected him. One left him for someone else. Another ghosted him after deep intimacy. Another mocked him when he showed vulnerability. Different women, same story. Logically, he knew these women weren't good for him. He even admitted it to his friends. She's not healthy for me. But he couldn't stop going back. Why? Because his unconscious wasn't chasing love. It was chasing resolution. This man grew up with a distant, cold mother. A woman who never showed affection, who made him feel invisible. And so as an adult, his psyche kept recreating that exact experience, seeking the same wound over and over, hoping one day to heal it. He wasn't chasing women. He was chasing his mother's ghost. This is how sexual attraction becomes a loop. You're not addicted to the person. You're addicted to the wound they represent, to the fantasy that this time, finally, you'll win. And that's the trap Jung tried to warn us about. Sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces in the psyche. It isn't just pleasure. It's tied to identity, safety, power, validation. When that energy fuses with your deepest emotional pain, it becomes magnetic, explosive, and dangerous. Now let's look at women. Many are drawn again and again to emotionally unavailable men. Men who are exciting, dominant, maybe even charming, but also cold, detached, cruel. They ask themselves, why am I only attracted to men who hurt me? Why do I lose interest when someone's too kind? It's not a flaw in character. It's emotional programming. Many grew up learning, directly or indirectly, that love must be earned, that being ignored means you must try harder, that rejection is a challenge. So when a man shows indifference, the attraction spikes. The unconscious whispers, there it is, the familiar pain. Let's fix it this time. And if that man knows how to exploit this, whether intentionally or instinctively, he becomes her obsession. Not because she loves him, but because she's trapped in her own shadow. That's not love. That's chaos wearing the mask of desire. But it doesn't stop there. Let's flip the mirror again. There are women, yes, modern women, who discover how powerful sexuality can be. They realize that seduction controls a man more effectively than logic or reason ever could. Not because they're villains, but because the strategy works. They learn that if they withhold emotional intimacy while offering intense physical seduction, They create a hook, a bond most men can't break. These women become the fantasy, not the real woman, but the man's projection. And the more he chases her, the more powerful she feels. It's not love. It's psychological domination. Jung would call this a projection trap. The man doesn't love her. He loves the missing half of himself he sees reflected in her. And here's the horror. She doesn't love him either. She loves the power. She loves watching him unravel because it gives her back something she lost long ago. Safety, control, or maybe even revenge. This is the darkest corner of sexual attraction, when two people don't meet with open hearts, but with broken mirrors. When intimacy isn't real, it's performance. When both sides are using each other to fix an old wound. And the cruel twist? The more intense it feels, the more dangerous it becomes. Because if you don't know your shadow, attraction will use it to drag you down, with a smile on its face. Jung didn't say all this to frighten us out of relationships. He said it because real love requires awareness. You have to examine the people you're drawn to and ask uncomfortable questions. What do they remind me of from my past? Do I feel safe with them or just addicted? Am I myself around them or just the version I think they want? Because here's a truth that stings. Attraction isn't always a sign of compatibility. Sometimes it's a warning. A flare in the night sky that says, you're about to replay an old story. That's why so many people say, why do I always fall for the same type? Or, I knew they were wrong for me, but I couldn't stop. The answer isn't found in logic. It lives in the unconscious. Jung's theory of individuation teaches us that wholeness comes only when we integrate all parts of ourselves. The anima, the animus, the shadow. Until then, we're not truly choosing partners. We're puppets. Desire pulls the strings and we call it fate. So if you keep chasing unavailable women or manipulative men or chaotic lust-driven relationships, you have to pause and ask, what part of me is choosing this? Why does this feel like home? Because until you answer, you'll keep waking up in the same nightmare. Different face beside you. Same story underneath. Here's the hard reality. We're not attracted to people. We're attracted to emotions we've never resolved. And in that chaos, love becomes a battlefield. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And if you're carrying wounds you've never healed, those wounds will speak louder than your words, louder than your values, louder than your logic. That's the shadow's cruel trick. Most of us think we fall in love with qualities, someone's voice, their eyes, their intelligence, their humor, their energy. But what if, beneath all that, we're really falling in love with a pattern? The pattern of not being chosen, the pattern of chasing attention, the pattern of love always being out of reach. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So let's make it concrete. Imagine a man who constantly falls for emotionally intense, seductive women. To him, this feels like chemistry, passion, destiny. But every time, he ends up drained, broken, confused. That's not passion. That's possession. He's not falling in love with women. He's falling into his shadow. Maybe he never felt powerful in life. Maybe he grew up believing his worth depended on being needed. So now he chases women who echo that insecurity back to him. The fear of never being enough. When they validate him, he feels like a king. When they pull away, he feels like nothing. That's not love. That's addiction. Now let's talk about women again. Many are drawn again and again to emotionally cold, dominant men. Men who withhold affection like it's a prize. And every time he looks away, it feels like a challenge. Maybe if I prove myself, he'll finally choose me. But she isn't drawn to him because he's exciting. She's drawn to him because he reminds her of the man who never truly saw her, her father, her first heartbreak, her earliest wound. And so her psyche says, let's finish this story. Maybe this time it'll end differently. But it won't, because he isn't her father. And this isn't healing. This is repetition. Jung called this the repetition compulsion, the cycle of reliving pain again and again until you finally become conscious of it. And the moment you see it clearly, the spell breaks. This is the key. Sexual attraction is often manipulated by trauma. The more familiar the wound feels, the stronger the desire becomes. We call it a spark, but really, it's a scream from the past. And that's why the most toxic relationships are often the hardest to escape. Not because of love, but because of entanglement. You're bound by invisible strings of unhealed pain. So what's the solution? Do we give up on love? Avoid desire? Fear attraction forever? No. But we do have to stop assuming that attraction equals alignment. We have to investigate our desires. Ask yourself, why do I feel pulled to this person? What emotion do they trigger in me? Does this attraction come from wholeness or from emptiness? Because if your desire is fueled by emptiness, it will always try to fill a hole. And no person on earth can fill that hole for you. Only you can. Jung believed the path to true love starts with individuation, the process of integrating the shadow, the wounds, the projections. Only then can you love without clinging. Only then can you choose instead of chase. Real love doesn't come from needing someone to heal your past. It comes from being present in your now. That's when sexual attraction shifts from chaos to clarity. That's when you stop being drawn to the storm and start being drawn to peace. And here's the paradox. Peace may not feel like passion at first. Because if your nervous system is addicted to chaos, calmness feels boring. Stillness feels suspicious. Safety feels foreign. But give it time, because peace isn't boring. It's just unfamiliar. Until you make it your home. So the next time your heart races, stop and ask, is this excitement? Or is this fear wearing a disguise? Because real love doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like stillness, like safety, like truth. That's the love Jung wanted us to find. Not the one forged from fantasy, or lust, or trauma, but the one born from integration. The love that doesn't bind you, but frees you. So before you fall in love with them, fall in love with the parts of you still crying out. Heal them. Listen to them. Then when you choose love, you'll do it from wholeness, not desperation. And that is how you escape the darkest truth of sexual attraction. Not by rejecting desire, but by learning its language. If this has made you rethink your whole relationship history, good. That discomfort you feel right now, that's the beginning of awareness. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start looking at your own patterns differently. You start questioning the people you've been drawn to. That magnetic pull you thought was love? Maybe it wasn't love at all. Maybe it was your shadow, using attraction as bait. Let's get brutally honest here. Think about your past relationships, the ones that left you drained, broken, or obsessed. Did you really fall for them? Or did you fall for the pattern they represented? The truth is, most of us aren't falling in love with qualities. We're falling in love with familiarity, with the echo of an old wound, with the story we've been trying to finish since childhood. And the unconscious doesn't care if it hurts you. It just wants resolution. That's why so many people can look back at their past and say, I knew they weren't right for me. I saw the red flags, but I couldn't stop. Because attraction isn't always about who the person is. It's about who your shadow needs them to be. This is why the cycle is so difficult to break. Your logic can scream, this is wrong. But your emotions whisper, this feels like home. And until you realize that home can sometimes be toxic, you'll keep walking through the same door again and again. Jung's warning was simple. If you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you'll call it fate. So what do we do about it? We stop treating attraction like a compass, because attraction isn't always pointing you toward love. Sometimes it's pointing you straight toward your wounds. That's why we need to become investigators of our own desires. Every time you feel that rush, that spark, that obsession, you have to pause and ask, what does this person awaken in me? Do they feel like safety, or do they feel like the storm I've always known? Am I excited, or am I anxious and calling it excitement? These questions sound simple, but they're the difference between repeating the cycle and breaking it. Because here's the hardest truth. Real love often won't look like what you're used to. If you've been raised on chaos, calmness will feel strange. If you've been wired to chase, someone who offers stability will feel too easy. If you've learned that love means proving your worth, unconditional affection will feel suspicious. That's why many people reject healthy partners. They say things like, they're too boring, there's no spark. But the reality is, their nervous system is addicted to the high of dysfunction. Peace feels wrong, only because pain feels familiar. So here's the terrifyingly beautiful shift. When you start healing, your taste in love changes. You're no longer pulled to people who mirror your wounds. You're drawn to people who reflect your wholeness. And that's when attraction transforms. It stops being a trap. It starts being a choice. But to get there, you have to stop running from your shadow. You have to turn around, look it in the face, and say, I see you. I know what you want, but I'm not letting you choose for me anymore. Because until you do, the shadow will keep dragging you back to the same battlefield. So how do you integrate the shadow? Jung's answer was individuation, the process of owning every part of yourself, even the parts you're ashamed of. It's about admitting your wounds, instead of pretending they don't exist. It's about holding your cravings up to the light and asking, do I want this because it's love, or because it's pain disguised as love? When you do that, desire stops being your enemy. It becomes your teacher. Because attraction itself isn't evil. It's a signal, a message, a mirror. Sometimes it's saying, this person is aligned with who you're becoming. Other times it's saying, this person is a reflection of what you still need to heal. And if you don't know the difference, you'll keep confusing the two. So here's a practice. Every time you feel that intense pull, slow down. Don't rush. Don't get swept up. Instead, sit with it. Ask yourself, what part of me feels lit up? Is this person truly safe? Or do they just feel familiar? Do I feel calm around them? Or addicted to them? That pause, that moment of investigation, could save you from years of repeating the same heartbreak. Because love shouldn't feel like a battlefield. It shouldn't feel like chasing, proving, or begging. Real love feels like recognition, like safety, like being seen, not because you fought for it, but because you already are enough. And here's the paradox. The people who bring you that kind of peace might not trigger fireworks on the first date. They might not make your heart race with anxiety disguised as passion. Instead, they'll make you feel grounded, whole, present. And if you've lived in chaos your whole life, that might feel boring at first. But it's not boring. It's freedom. Because love isn't meant to trap you. It's meant to free you. So before you go searching for someone to fill your emptiness, turn inward. Heal the parts of you that still ache for attention, that still long for validation, that still crave the love they never received. Because here's the ultimate truth. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you haven't healed. And when you heal, your attractions shift. The pull toward chaos weakens. The addiction to the familiar pain dissolves. And for the first time, you actually have a choice. That's when you can love from wholeness, not hunger. That's when chemistry stops being a curse and becomes a gift. So if this video made you rethink your relationships, even if it made you a little uncomfortable, hit the like button so we know this content matters. Drop a comment with the biggest realization you had while watching. Have you ever been in love with someone who mirrored your old wounds? And how did you break free from the cycle? Because this isn't just about relationships. This is about building a community of people willing to confront the unconscious patterns that shape their lives. We're not just building a channel. We're building an emotional revolution. So subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and remember this. Attraction is not fate. Love is not a pattern. And healing your shadow is the most powerful act of love you'll ever commit. Because in the end, you don't just attract what you desire. You attract what you are. Make sure what you are is whole. Make that healing your power.